running a Thursday happy hour with Drink Up with my friend Michael Gallup. Is that the right name, Michael?
Close enough,
Uh,
Caleb. Yeah.
Gallup, close
Yeah.
enough. And then he's with 3G Group. I think
5G.
that's they call it. We were talking about
You
the
missed it by
other
two.
word,
5G.
5G. Sorry, I missed it by two.
That's
But
okay.
5G Group, I apologize. I'm already blowing it. And Adam, welcome back to Drink Up as the co-host. Being that you're in the center of the screen, you get to run point today, Adam, the whole bit. But
Cool.
anyway, so Michael, I can't remember how we found each other, but it's been a while since we've talked.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm trying to remember. It was like right around just after Christmas time when we met.
yeah,
Um, Marshall.
Marshall.
Hmm.
Okay.
Leave
All
it.
right.
Yeah,
So Marshall, he's quite the connector. We've had Andy Poe on.
sure.
Now
I
we
know.
got
I've known Andy for a long time.
right. I just had Tam Annie.
Yeah.
She's an attorney, intellectual property attorney. She was just on last week. I really enjoyed talking to her, and obviously just talked to Marshall. I think it was just yesterday. We had about an hour conversation. So are you
Yeah.
part of his group?
Yeah, but Marshall, his gift is he's a connector, definitely a connector.
Yeah.
There's some people have that gift. I think when you met and I met, we were kind of connecting each other with so many things. It becomes pretty
Yeah.
small industry through the beverage and CPG. So
100%. And so we're so happy to connect with you. So Adam, you've been out a little bit before we get into where you been, Adam. Welcome back, and then I'm gonna let you take the helm and introduce Michael here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Where have I been? Last week it was. Oh, so some of you will know this. So my wife is in grad school to become a therapist, and she's working part time. She may be coming home on this, so if I mute for an extended period, that's why, because the dogs are lighting off. But the clinic that she works at did a walk on Saturday morning as a fundraiser for the clinic, and so we were doing that. That's what I was doing this past weekend.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
yeah, it was super fun. Her family surprised us with a visit. It was really cool. But as always, good to be back. Planning on being around this Saturday. So, yeah, I mean, Michael, I guess to start us off, my first question is: you mentioned before we went live that you had started, hundreds of brands over the years, or been involved with
yeah,
the start of hundreds of brands, and that it kind of led you to data.
right.
And I think I'd be interested to hear, you know, a little bit more of what that
Sure.
broken, God
You
bless the
mean
broken road
how,
kind of
how
look
my
like in terms
journey
of
started or how it's ending right now?
exactly, yeah, yeah,
So
Hopefully, it's not over yet.
no, I don't think so. But I think the thing is that I didn't realize that actually we go through interesting journeys, and I didn't really realize I've always been I started as a brand manager for Dole Foods, and then ConAgra, and set my life around kind of just marketing and sales and large CPG. But where it started to kind of I guess started to take a change. While I always was a brand manager or CMO, I always was data centric. I was the heavier user of Nielsen, the heavier user of household panel data. And what that really does is storytelling. There's really two pieces of storytelling, right? Everybody's the stake of doing business is that I have a good product, it tastes good, and then that's one table stake. The next is so what makes you different, and again that's more brand centric.
hmm
But the other thing that can really make you different is your data and your data story, and how you talk about household penetration and different pieces. You don't have to be the largest brand in the block to start telling your story. And there's two things to that. And I got a little bit off track, but when you're in front of a buyer or so, is that if you know the category just as well, or you're giving them insights to what's happening in their category, they kind of think, oh, this person, all right, everybody's got a brand, but they know their category, they know my business, and then they can give me a little bit more intel. And it's just those kind of, I call them, favors when you go into a pitch that you're providing for them. So, but really, the data started to tell stories, and where my first really large experience was doing that was I was CMO for Emergency, which is a little vitamin packet.
Cool.
And,
Yeah,
and,
Emergent
and
Dash C.
yeah,
Yeah.
and we early on, um, we started to, one is that we started to know who we were, but a little bit of soundbite to that data is when I came into the organization as a CMO, we were white lab coats. I mean, we were vitamin C brand, and then when we went and we really talked to our consumer, it's like we were cool, we were hip, we were, with snowboarders, we were just everything that vitamin C brand wasn't. So at that point in time, we utilized um, our data source, which was our users. And at the time, 15 years ago, um, we would do a survey with our, Facebook and Instagram users. So you can do what they call an attitude and usage study. And as I say this day, you never know your consumer well enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we came out with sound bites that even if you're doing social media, even if you're doing, TikTok or whatnot, is that now you understand what is bringing your consumer, your heavy user to the brand.
Yeah.
Went off a little bit track and started to
Yeah.
kind of what
No,
things.
that's fine. This is how we roll on
Yeah.
Drink Up. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
like having coffee with friends, quite frankly. But let's get back to your company. So
Yeah.
Conagra, Dole, you're a CMO. Why did you? So you founded 5G,
Right.
5G, right?
Correct.
Not 3G, 5G.
3G
first of all,
was an old system, but no, anyway. Go ahead.
but
Um,
why 5G? What is it that your
Yeah.
services are?
So I had 3 tours of duty with private equity, meaning I was hired. I was kind of normally private equity, just for lack of a better term, they normally hire three guns. You've got a CEO, some sales executive, and some marketing executive. If you want to call them VPs or C-suite or whatnot, that's usually what happens. And so I was after, well, one step back as I worked with Roll International, which was Palm Wonderful, Fiji Water, and others, and I had launched those. So that kind of got me into this private equity groups. And, I helped to raise Emergency and then went on to another brand called Gardein, and then another called Rainbow Light. But each had the same problem is as we were scaling, we just couldn't afford the type of talent that we wanted. And early on, in my days of Emergency, it's like, well, I would love to form something that can help emerging brands and growing brands grow at a fraction of the cost. And so we started in more of a sales organization. I call Add Water, and you can have an instant sales team. I've had so many experiences from, raising, approximately probably 25 brands and 150 products that, we're like doctors, and we can kind of analyze your problem pretty quickly and get you going pretty quickly. And we act as your advocate and your partner in sales. So now my pivot has been sales is great, but now data is king. And so about a year ago, we started to do a lot more data analytics in terms of visualization at kind of a C level. And what I mean by that is that data is only data unless you can visualize it in a way that a third grader can understand it.
That's funny. We have an app called Pinata. So we require all our brokers to use this app to communicate with us, right? So I took the data and I dumped it into an Excel document, and I started to create a pivot table. And I'm like, there's just nothing there in the data. It's as good as what you put into it, what spits out. So I'm like, talking to Pinata, I'm like, maybe I'm going to the wrong data source, and I did. I used the wrong data source, which you can often do that, I guess. But so you offer companies the taking that data, turning it into action to do something with it. So if I'm going to Walmart like next week,
right?
Like you could help me prepare for my call to go to Walmart. I'm assuming with my brands or not.
Absolutely, it depends on what depth, though. So
okay. Yeah, well, I asked you a question earlier, and chime in, Adam, is because this is top of mind. I literally was talking to a distributor today, which will remain nameless, and I have two hot brands, one called Even, here, and another one called Remix. Like these are two of the hottest NAs right now in the marketplace. This is like going into Sprouts nationwide. It's the number 2 brand on Amazon. This brand supports golf. Anyway, the distributor turned me down. Said no.
Right.
Sorry, Derek, if you're listening to this right now. We'll find another opportunity. But this particular distributor, we'll find another one. But what's interesting, I guess my data points weren't, good enough for them to make a decision.
What were you using?
I was talking about velocity. So, for instance, even in Colorado, the latest numbers coming out, they do 2 cases a week per store per week. The reorder rate's at 100%. So it went from 87% to 100% in a matter of 60 days. And then that golf course is averaging 5 cases a week. And I was at Walmart like 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to be there next week.
Right.
And the average expected dollar per store is $38 a week. If I'm selling
so that's about 4 or 5 units in kind of general, right, in that category.
Right, but the distributor didn't seem to resonate with them for some reason, and I don't know what's going on. I think maybe it's the category. Do you get into category stuff too, Pacific?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, you have to get into categories because you want to know what those hurdle rates are, right? So, one of my favorite metrics is productivity, meaning, I could have a brand, well, I'll make a gross example, but you have one item that sells at $100.
Yeah.
And another item that sells 3 at $5, what would you rather have? Yes, my item's going to sell less. Depends. Now you get into household penetration and how many somebody's coming into the store and all that. But in a relative example, there's a beverage brand that I'm working with in the kind of better for you protein segment. Okay. They all relatively have 4 and 5 units per store per week, but they're doing about $5 per unit more than their kind of peer competition. So every time somebody's coming to the store, they're gaining a $5 kind of increment compared to what their peers.
So it's kind of dollars in the bank plus movement. So if I can sell the $100 item versus 3 or 4 items, maybe I want to sell the $100 item. I don't know.
Right.
I mean,
and if your velocity is pretty good at a $5 rate, and very comparable to somebody at a $4 rate, now you can start talking brand value, those kind of things where I believe in a salesperson might want to go in and say, oh, well, I can get it for, soda water is at, $2.99 and we're a brand at, $3.49. I'm just making something up. The first intuition is that, well, I have to be close to that $2.99. Well, not really. Our productivity says that if I've been time and time again shown against brand A or B or whatnot, is that we time and time have gone and had a better productivity, whether it's through Sprouts, Whole Foods, Meijer, you name it. Then you can start.
Can we step back on productivity? And maybe Adam, you have a question on this. Can you just, what is the math for productivity?
Yeah, it's velocity times your price. So you have a productivity.
Okay, got it. So that's when we were talking about the $100 versus the units at $4 to $5.
Yeah, but
interesting. This is because this item, like here, another example. I'm sorry to show it again, Adam. It's going to drive him nuts. You can bring Adam. You can bring items too, by the way, to the table. But I'm picking on them today. He's probably going to be mad at me after this podcast. But this sells for $24.99 for a 6-pack, right?
Yeah.
So and it's doing really well. And then like this item sells for like $11.99 for a 4-pack.
Right.
So it's less.
Right.
But the productivity on this item might be higher because it's a higher price.
Yeah. You can sell. You have to sell 2 times the amount of the other one and this.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that there are some other information. If you're lucky enough to have numerator or other pieces. You can start. One of my other favorite things to do is let's take the $24.99 product and say, all right, well, I know your consumer. Let's take Wegmans, for example. Wegmans has a higher valued consumer or somebody in a higher income bracket. So, not only is this moving productivity, it matches who your consumer is, and so you would start to bring that into the play. some of the other things is go into their 10K and understand sometimes there's CEO notes that say, oh, well, we're changing gears for Target, would be a good one, is that reaching for another type of consumer.
So you would
Those
go
are-
into the 10K to the public record and
Yeah.
basically see what they're talking about. Interesting.
Right.
You
Sorry,
done- you done that, Adam?
you gotta slow down for me. What the hell is a 10K?
Uh, 10K is just a public record of information of that stock companies that have a stock have to do fiscal report, well, quarterly reporting and fiscal reporting. So they have a lot of guidelines that they have to say what they're saying, and also that they're what do you call it? It's share for their shareholders.
That's interesting. Going to Walmart or like Wegmans or Fresh Market, the accounts. Look at your point of they're publicly traded. Go prepare to the call. Go look at the 10K. I never thought of that. That's excellent information.
Yeah.
Interesting.
By the way.
And in today's environment, how easy it can, how easy you can go look at somebody up or look up what the brand is doing or look up what the retailer is doing. It's almost a shame that you're not walking in with that information.
I'm curious,
kind of a
Michael,
yeah.
You said something. You said several things, but you said something right in the first few minutes that said, and I'm sure I'm butchering it, but
Butcher
you
way.
never know too much about your customer,
Right.
right?
Consumer,
Consumer.
but and customer.
So I love that. I think it's worth it. It bears repeating, but I'm curious. So for me, like quick preface. I work with folks mostly that are super small. I mean, they've been doing this less than 6 months.
Right.
So if you had to, right, list out maybe the top 3 or 5 things that every brand should know about who their consumer is, right? So the end consumer. I guess where do you? Because to your point, like it's a never-ending list of information that you can manipulate,
Sure.
and use, and make value out of. But where do you start? So like, what's the baseline that you start with, or that you recommend starting with?
So an early on lesson, and I'm going to butcher his name, but there's a about I'd say 5 to 7 years ago, Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he writes the books like Leaders Eat Last and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came out with the Crossing the Chasm. It's an early state. Crossing the Chasm has been around for many years. What Crossing the Chasm means is that you have a core user, early adopter of your brand. They have a certain, and I'm going to go back just a second, because the playing field, whereas maybe Sam and I grew up in demographic, the whole thing is psychographic now. I have the same psychographic as my son, who's 26. We both work out. We both kind of hang out at the same thing. So
That's Adam and I. I've worked out, Adam.
yeah, so we're at kind of the same psychographic. There's not even that much musical difference anymore because it's so at your fingertips.
Yeah.
So there's certain sound bites within your brand of why your core user is using you.
Yeah.
And so what can you do? You can lead a focus, even if you butcher it, you can lead a focus group with your, like what we're doing now is lead a focus group with some of your heavy users. They're all online. You gained them from Instagram and whatnot. So start talking to them. Why'd you get into the brand? What makes us different than the others? Because one of my pet peeves, and yes, we're more about sales of 5G, but one of my pet peeves is that when you look at an Instagram, they're just showing their package, they're just showing whatnot. That's kind of brochureware. But if you understood more of what your consumer was thinking about or how they think of you, you can start adding those sound bites into your social media, into your presentations that you're giving to your retailers. There's just, again, it's really a data point.
So
right?
do you have a use case? Just get into this a little bit because everybody asks. Like I'm sure when you're trying to get a client, like, okay, Michael, give me your use case. Do you have a
Yeah,
use case where you got those sound bites that someone wants to take on your services?
yeah,
That say the reason you want to use 5G is because let me give you a use case where I had this problem I identified or opportunity I saw this white space. Maybe give us an example of kind of
sure.
what you guys do.
So there was a brand I mean, this is the use cases happen, but probably the most, I say the word gross, but larger, was we were working with a brand. I'm trying to remember what it was before, but it was called something soda. But the we changed the brand. It was Diabolo French soda.
Okay.
And so we did, we started, it had this really great following, small following, small but strong following. We were in stores like Kroger and stuff where the brand was, it just wasn't moving. So we there was two things that we do is one, we're kind of the sales, but also the CEO said, look, we're kind of just not, our velocities aren't there. We've been stagnant. So we did some focus groups. And what was interesting, he was French born, and that's the reason why he bought the product. But when we had our focus groups, we didn't realize how much that heritage that people believed in and brought. The negatives was there wasn't a lot of sugar in it. There's only 6 grams of sugar, which isn't a lot in today's world. Well, in any world, it's not that much, but but it was the heritage. So um, the soundbite was what we came up with was French sparkling French lemonade. So we turned it from a soda to a lemonade to sparkling, which, a lot of it, there was some kind of secret sauce in there, but our consumers were telling us they liked the lightness. They really dug into the story of who, this French person who started it was. And then we started the sparkling French lemonade, and it really it took off from there.
How do you find the data points though? How do you like what did you use to discover that from the consumer? Like where
Um,
does that come from?
yeah, so you know, uh, there's a yes and to that, but is the right questions within the moment and having a moderator. My partner is a moderator, and the good thing about him is he talks a lot. The bad thing
So you
is,
guys do like focus groups then?
yeah.
Do
So
you
we
bring
will do the
focus groups?
focus groups for them at like almost nothing, to get things started. But the
Okay.
good thing is he talks a lot. The bad thing, as a partner, he talks a lot, But the thing is, when he's with consumers or potential, he really teases those things out of them. And
Yeah.
he's been in CPG industry for way too long as well. But we're able to tease those sound bites out and then build a positioning of that.
How does that become statistically relevant? Like how many consumers do you need to touch based on what you hear in that sound bite? What is the
Yeah, it depends
stat on
on,
that?
yeah, I mean, I'm going to say it depends on your budget, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, if you go back to any Steve Jobs thing, consumers don't know what they don't know.
Yes.
So you can go into a focus group, and you get these sound bites and you can digest them. And I guess I'm just lucky that I have a good right and left brain, that I
Yeah.
kind of hear what they're hearing, and I can tease those out in a kind of a more creative process. I can't draw with poo, but stick figures. But anyway, um, so we kind of developed that into what are those single things that people are saying, and that's where it came into. And
I have a business opportunity for you, by the way.
awesome.
So speaking of that, so I do work with a company called Pinata. Adam knows
Yeah.
this. So Pinata
Yeah.
basically was founded by Josh Wan, who leads Force Brands, and Ian
Oh, okay, right.
Ferguson runs the business, and Fred Kunda. So if you guys are watching, maybe out there, if you happen to come across, I'm giving you a plug here. But you should definitely talk to them because they work with over 200 tasting agencies across North America. They touch
Interesting.
hundreds of thousands of consumers every year, and they're actually tasting products like this
Right.
at the point of purchase, and the sound bites that they're capturing from their data inputs, it's I mean from RNDC, Gallo, Pernod,
Mhm.
Proximo, William Grant, Mark Anthony, so on and so forth. I
Right.
would think that those are some data points you at 5G would be interested in,
For
maybe
sure.
like capturing.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah. No. Um, I will get in touch with them.
Yeah, I will make sure that that happens. But my point is, I love data. I think I told you earlier. I don't know we talked about this earlier, but I would literally took a bunch of data because we basically have our team track activities in the marketplace. And
Right.
so distributors or suppliers want to know, what did you do for me lately, right? They want to know, how many accounts did you touch? Did you
Sure.
sell me a pod? Did you build me a display? Did you put me in a cold box? Did you sell me a case? Am I on the menu?
Right.
Whatever. So I'm trying to go through this data, but data is only as good as the data you put in. Is that a true statement?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's two things is that you were saying you did pivot tables, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For the average ADD CEO, uh, uh, um, um, a pivot table is, I don't know. I don't think they really like that. So how can you turn that data into something visual that a third grader can pick up? And, not that a CEO is at the third grade level, but their mind is in so many different places. If you can tell me the story that I need to in a picture, awesome.
Yeah.
And
So
I
you use
think
like Tableau or Power BI or
we
something?
use Power BI, and then there's these
Okay.
web dashboards that we're pushing into. But
Okay.
I constantly look at what's out there, meaning every time I get some, oh, there's this data person, and I start to look at it, and it's like, well, it doesn't meet my standards. It doesn't meet my standards of I have to think too hard to make what this data
I'm going to
looks.
put you on the spot. Do you have any data you could share on the screen, like kind of what a dashboard looks like? If you don't,
Um,
that's okay.
I do and I don't. I would have to get approval for that to.
Ah,
Sure. But
okay. But you
I
can,
spent,
when we go live, we can also put an attachment to or
yeah,
whatever. Because love to, because I'm a visual person
yeah,
too. I love the maps that pop up. So literally, the one thing that
heat
Pinata
map.
does when I go into my data has the heat maps, and
Yep,
I can see. I'm like, boy, I'm in Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, and it's
right,
just like really powerful. I can see what's happening. Like I have this team of people that are activating a brand in real time, and I
right.
can see what's happening. I mean, I'm assuming that like a CEO would love to see that.
Yeah, but the idea there is a CEO just sees it and he gets globally, I'm in 7,000 data points.
Yeah,
But on a macro or micro level, you want that person to say, all right, well, I'm in 7,000 data point, or I'm in 2,000 data points.
yeah,
Those data points, am I in stock? Am I out of stock? Has somebody not ordered in the last 2 weeks? So now you're visualizing there's two pieces to that data, right? There is the PO, that's just the shipments going to that
yeah.
distributor. And then from the distributor, there's their ship tos. That's kind of where the rubber meets the road. Um,
Interesting.
you
What
know,
what what is a we talked about this earlier. What does a customer want to know or need to know, or maybe they don't know they need to know it? And then what does a supplier need to know, or maybe they don't know that they know it a
okay,
little
so
bit.
customer,
So
you're talking about a distributor or a retailer?
both, I guess. We could start with let's just start with retailer because they're the
Yeah.
true gatekeepers to the consumer.
True. So I think, is it, are we storytelling? Because and if you are, um, if I'm a buyer,
Yeah,
I want to know, so what's my category doing? Is it up? Is it down? And then the next kind of, everybody's doing dollars and units, right? I mean,
okay,
that's kind of that's table stakes of getting into data. The
yeah,
next is, we talked about productivity,
yeah,
but who's adding more contribution to the category,
mhm,
right? So now contribution is, we can go back to your two mixes,
right.
and I'm sure the one that's $24 a six pack,
Six pack. Yep. Mhm.
pack, they're probably adding, assuming they're in the same category, is that is another soundbite that people can use. Is what is my contribution? So if the category's down and you're up,
Right.
you can say I'm contributing over 100% to the category growth, because there's a lot of other brands that are dragging it down. And we're going through that right now with and I'll name the ones that aren't part of my clients, but there's, so Bolthouse and Naked Juice are the 10,000-pound gorillas
Yeah.
in the kind of refrigerated, I, if, depending on your definition of better for you shakes out there.
Yeah.
So they're the 10,000-pound gorilla. However, they're declining because the consumer is changing, right? The
Right.
consumer doesn't want more sugar; they want a little more attributes, those kind of things. But there's a ton of brands that are eroding, or so the erosion is coming from. There's two things, but the erosion is coming from other brands. But now, some of these other better for you brands, higher protein, cleaner ingredient deck, they're contributing to the category much better than anybody else.
Wow. So
that make sense?
contribution, yeah, no. So it's funny because I'm learning a lot here. Everybody's like paying attention. So I'm a brand. I've been like honed in on velocity and reorder, but now now I'm going to talk about contribution. What was the other one we talked about before contribution?
Productivity.
Productivity. So there's contribution, productivity, velocity, and reorder rate. And then I hear this thing ACV. What is
Yes.
ACV? Can you explain to me what that is?
Sure, it's called all commodity volume.
Yeah.
That's the definition. I
Yeah.
think of it as real estate, so
Okay.
it's real estate there. So
Okay.
there's so much real estate in the US of shelf space. I'm
Right.
just going to take a gross example is Walmart, because of its sheer mass, has a higher ACV if you're in there than maybe, I don't know, Meijer.
Okay.
So when you're looking at it, as a global level, but when you could be looking at it at the brand level, item brand level, you're looking at Meijer. How much ACV do I have of their availability? Just it's a percent.
Is that like total space, basically?
It's a percent of real estate.
Okay.
That number can get really tricky because a lot of larger brands get into total distribution points, which is ACV times your item level. And so a lot more people look at TDPs, they're called, and your velocity per TDP.
Do you have like a spreadsheet you could share? I could actually, when we post it,
I can. Do you have notes and stuff that go to people after this, or
yeah. So when I post it, I'd love to put that in. Like here's like velocity, contribution, ACV, reorder, those things that you need to know because this is really valuable information. I don't think people think about it. You said it earlier, like people don't know what they really need to know. Right. And then how I've approached ACV is, am I doing this right? And I don't know if I am, so I'm just going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
I always we'll take like a benchmark brand. Like, okay, like I asked the brand, like, who do you want to be? Who are you benchmarking against?
Sure.
So I want to be like Tito's. I'm like, okay, well, Tito's is like, they're like in 100% of Walmart.
Right.
Okay. They're everywhere. Everywhere Walmart can sell liquor, Tito's is there. I guarantee it. Right.
Yep, 100%.
All right, but I'm a brand called Fix Vodka, and I just want to be like Tito's. You're only in 2 of the Walmart stores, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at those 2 stores, your velocity of that item is like 2 cases versus Tito's is only 1.
Right.
Right? So
Now
the
you've got a
math
data
would
set.
be, so I could actually take that 2 cases. If I was in every store, I would be outselling Tito's Walmart. Is that how it works, basically?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
100%. There you go.
Okay.
And that's where challenger brands come in, right?
Okay.
We all are, rah for the challenger brand, right? That's who we all are.
Yeah.
So a challenger brand doesn't have that ACV yet, doesn't
Right.
have all those pieces. But, you don't want to be everywhere to everybody for everything, meaning stay local, live local, and build out from there. It
Oh my
might
God.
be a little bit slower, but
So stay local, be local, and build out from there.
Yeah. When we take on brands, you've got big, everybody wants to be all over the country,
Right.
but there's so many tailwinds that hurt you in that. You don't have the cash,
Yeah.
and that's okay. So you don't have the finances that everybody else does. So how am I going to grow profitably? It's going to be slower. But I
Yeah.
have to build a minimal viable product first before anybody's going to believe me.
Yeah.
So before I go on,
I love MVP, man. It's funny you said that. So you're saying, have you, be local, stay local, and build out from there? Is that what you said?
yeah,
And that's
right.
how you build your MVP?
Correct. Minimal viable product.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
actually it came from I think
Phones, cell
it's a
phones,
kid.
right? Like cell phones, like isn't it like this is the MVP, right? It constantly is improving, right? Like
Yeah.
they're kind of,
But I think it came from more tech, fail fast, build a minimal viable product.
okay.
So, I
Interesting.
mean, if I'm a large brand, I want to fail fast or grow fast, right? If I'm a large brand, but let's just get into the minimal because the
Yeah.
big mistake is that I'm trying to grow too fast. I'm trying to be in too much distribution. So what happens to you? Well, there's the little hidden truths about distributors and distribution is that it costs money to expand, and people don't see that. And again, that's one of the other things that we help guide early stage brands in, um, because of the expense. It costs me more to go to the next level. It costs me more, especially in beverage. You're moving heavy product, one more ship point, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I talked about a brand, I'm going to rename nameless, the
Yeah.
brand, and that literally was in 38 states across BevMo and Total Wine and More, and had like 10 distributors lined up. And the distributor would show up saying, I need my order. Like, well, we got one flavor ready, but you can come back in 4 weeks to get the next flavors. And
Right.
then it was direct to Total Wine and More, and they're like, well, we're not available until like 6 weeks. Well,
Right.
guess what happened?
Yeah. They got discoed.
They got discoed, and it was a very good brand and very good distribution early on in the beer category, and I feel really bad and awful for
Yeah.
them, but they didn't invest money. So I love what you say that, start small, go small, build out from there, and then because you give them protection. I talked to so many founders, Alicia and I. Hello, Alicia, if
Yeah.
you're out there, and blessings to you today. My heart goes out to you and your family. But I'm sorry, I lost
No.
myself here a little bit. But
Yes.
anyway, I love it when a founder says, I want to go just focus on Minnesota. Like I had a founder, actually it's a little champagne that we're bringing on. And Alicia goes, well, we got people in New York, we can go to Jersey. He goes, nope, I'm going to focus on Florida this year, and I'm going to focus on Miami.
Right.
He goes, and I'm going to build from there. And this is a very successful entrepreneur. He has like several books. He has a game show, the whole bit. So he knows what he's doing. But I really respected that because, I mean, there's only so much money because production. I wish Adam was here. He had storms, by the way, to let you know. So storms hit. There's some storms coming into Minneapolis. But yeah, I think you can run out of money really quick operationally. If you can't produce it and you can't fill that order, like what's the expected fulfillment rate for like customers out there in the marketplace?
You've got to fill it a 90% or above.
Wow.
Yeah. I think you do.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that, and we're, kind of a side note to data, is that you might be filling a KeHE or a UNFI or a McLean at 100%,
Yeah.
but they might not be doing their job to whoever you're expecting to ship to. They've gotten a lot better, but I don't know. KeHE is notorious for not filling, having their fill rates to their customers.
Does your data track that? Do you track like
Yeah, and that
Unify and
tracks
they're
it.
doing-
That's kind of one of our, I like to say there's Monday morning quarterback meetings that you have with yourself. One of
Yes.
those as a salesperson is, what's my fill rate? So if I can have that from each distributor on my lap on a Monday morning, I can go scream at whoever I want if it's, it's failing.
Well, it's funny. One of the brands that we represent, they're going to go into 500 Sprouts, and I think Sprouts is either serviced by KeHE or Unify.
They're
maybe.
serviced by KeHE.
They are. So
Yeah.
it's interesting, and it's a 90-day kind of deal, right? So it's like
Right.
the innovation program, I guess they call it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
their
kinda
Forger
learning-
program, I think.
What's it called? Forger program?
Forger. Yeah.
All right, yeah, so it's interesting. I have to connect you up with Dave Martin as
Yeah.
well. He's like an expert in that space. A lot of people we can connect. I'm
Yeah,
so glad we're
sure.
back together. I think we need to talk more, actually, because I'm a data guy. I think we've done ourselves a disservice, Michael, for waiting so long to get back together,
Yeah.
quite frankly. But it's interesting. They're all excited. We're going to do 100,000 cans, right?
Right.
But first of all, KeHE doesn't fill that order, and those 90 days, they have a lot at stake.
Well, and there's an interesting, I think so. Being in KeHE National, or sorry, not KeHE National, Sprouts
Yeah.
nationally is a blessing and a curse.
Okay.
Right. The blessing is that you're going to get sales. The
Yeah.
curse is at what cost, right? So, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I totally know that, but have your eyes wide open, right? Especially a beverage brand. I'm starting to move heavy product to, 6 to 7 different DCs. There's a high cost to that.
Yeah,
right?
I hope one of my owners, because I have two different brands, I'll remain nameless, but
Yeah.
one is actually starting local and they're
Uh-huh.
doing direct to retail because we're trying to find a distributor, so we're trying to build that velocity story, the reorder
Sure.
rate, the
Right.
contribution, and productivity.
Yeah.
Getting better at this, and then also to tell the ACV story. We
Right.
definitely, if you can make a cheat sheet, would be really good.
Sure.
To
I
all
mean,
these founders, but what's interesting about the one brand is they're going local. They
uh-huh.
really are. They
Right.
started in Colorado. They build the story out, and then the other brand got in with like Ally Libations. They got into the innovation program. They're going to KE. And
Right.
what do you call the program? The Sprouts program is what's that called again?
The Forger program.
Yeah, so Forge program. So they're going like the opposite way. They're going like hitting
Yeah.
the big chains the whole bit.
Right.
And I'm not saying one is worse than the other, but if I was me, I would go to the other way
It,
versus the big one because you only have one shot of going national. And if
right.
it doesn't work in an innovation program, you're done, right? At the end of the day, or no?
Yeah. And no, as far as I understand, you might get 1.5 shot. So that client of yours that was, ran out of product,
Yeah.
how many times did you go? How many times did they come and want to, pick up? I don't know if they were picking up or they were delivering.
Now, what happened was in that particular client, it was a beer. They tried twice, and then we got the note, "Hey, we're discontinuing you. We don't need. We're done." And then the distributor's like, because well, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
I did some math, but like if I'm out of stock in a Walmart, and my unit costs like $5, that's like hundreds of thousands of dollars across the footprint.
Right.
Like I can't, as a buyer, I'm like I can't. If you can't fulfill me, I'm losing money. I got to go.
Yeah.
There's 18 people in line waiting for that shelf spot.
Right.
Either you're going to be ready, it's go time. You can't fill the order, then you're not coming in my spot, right? I mean,
And that's another reason why 5G was built, is
Yeah.
that we're trying to eliminate blind spots, right?
Yeah.
We lean in. If we were if we were with your clients, like, your POs, you're not delivering those things. What's going on with your, I call it order to cash or your value
Yeah.
chain? What's going on there? So, and again, they're kind of data, but it starts to say, so how are you watching your operations as an early stage brand?
So you guys do that? Do you offer that service into brands?
That's, you get a little bit more than, face value. So we kind of dig into that as well. Although we're your sales or data partner, we're there to hopefully we want to make you successful.
So do you like create like so this with the final few moments, there's a couple of questions I want to ask you, but do you have
Right.
like a dash, like if I sign up for your service at 5G,
Uh-huh.
do you give me a dashboard and I run like all my data, operations, SNOP, the whole bit, or?
Those are very different modules, but at the end of the day, yes.
Okay.
And what's kind of interesting about that, there's an end of the day, yes, and this is a whole nother can of worms, right?
Yeah.
But we're taking all this data, ingesting it, and using AI language, hopefully that we can get there. So
Yeah.
wouldn't it be nice in the morning, and we're close, is that you wake up in the morning and you say, all right, my brand's up. You can actually type in, what accounts are my brand up in? Done. Can you tell me what products haven't been ordered in the last week and where? Done.
Oh, so you're aggregating, you have like a data lake and stuff and all the data sources going in, and then you basically AI is going in and saying, okay, find me the key
Yeah, and
insights.
it's
Almost like a
not as
chat
easy.
GPT that basically with all this data in there, and then basically you're feeding it and they can come back and spit out the information.
That sounds very easy, and yes, but
Yeah.
you have to teach. You have to teach. You do have to teach it that dog knew tricks.
Yeah.
So it is how to interpret the data, how to read it, and what kind of consistency it comes out of. But that's the ultimate goal that
Yeah.
we hopefully can give, growing emerging brands, because I guarantee that there's the Procter and Gambles of the world that are probably have thought about this, getting there, whatnot.
Yeah. So I got asked the money question.
Yeah.
Brands are like, I can't afford you, man. I'm a small brand. I have no money. I'm trying to raise money. Like, what is the
Yeah. Yeah.
cost of poker to work with you? Is there different
Um,
packages?
There's different packages and different,
Yeah.
kind of the depth, but, we we'll just say as a sales organization, we start about 7,500 for a region,
Okay.
which isn't bad.
Okay.
I say you get 5 people that touch your brand
Yeah.
that all have 20 years of experience versus you can go out and get 4 people to do the same work,
Right.
or 3, or you're going to hire a director or VP of sales, and that person's, $100,000 easy. And
Right.
so that's why I say, earlier better, that we can kind of help you get your stage work, and you're going to want to hire a salesperson anyway. So why don't
What's
you?
interesting too, because like I manage Nielsen and like Data Essentials and
Yeah,
all the different data sources came through Breakthrough, and I
right.
ultimately paid the bill on behalf of the family,
Yeah.
and it was over a couple $1 million, but we were paying for those data sources, you know,
Yeah.
and only a handful of people actually touched those data sources. Drove me nuts. But we had
Yeah.
had to have it to go call on Kroger and Walmart and Target
I know.
and build the story or deal with the suppliers that we were
Yeah.
trying to date. That's awesome. Well, let
But
me
that,
transition. Oh, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. No, but that's a symptom across many organizations, right? You've got all this information, but how do you get people to use it? How do you make it easier? And
Yeah,
that's the challenge. We're working with a $200 million client that's their sales,
yeah.
has that symptom. You
Yeah,
would think that somebody at that size has nailed it. Not at
yeah.
all. So
No,
you,
well, breakthrough in revenue is I think 8 to 10 billion or whatever. I can't give you the
yeah,
exact number,
right,
but it was relatively large, and but most people weren't looking at the data points, which is a shame because if you really break it down, and I would love to get that sheet and
yeah,
share it with everybody. But really, if I'm going to go tell the story to the gatekeeper, and I have two gatekeepers in my life, a distributor
uh-huh.
and a customer. So it'd be
And your
like
wife.
break and my wife, yeah, Breakthrough Beverage, Walmart, and my wife. But
Right,
at the end of the day, ultimately, to get to the consumer, I got to go through them. I got to give them a reason to want to buy. And I think when you
right,
talk about velocity, you talk about contribution, productivity, ACV. It's like, okay, if I'm a distributor, I want to know that when I take it in my warehouse, it's out of there in 30 days.
right,
And I want to know if I go get distribution for you as a distributor that it's going to be outside that customer in 30 days so that I can actually, deplete it and then ship it to, or ship it, the customer would actually get the takeaway. Then I would deplete it to the customer. Then as a supplier, I want to know that I can ship it,
right,
to the distributor. So if I could tell the supplier story, I actually have three people: the supplier, the distributor, and the customer. So
right.
what you do is so incredible.
And
So I'd love
and
to.
don't discount what that the other side of it, that what that means for your operations, right?
Yeah,
Starting to understand your velocities and things like that. How do you
yeah,
throw that into forecasting and all that other stuff?
yeah. What about? And I want to go a little longer if you're cool with it,
Yeah,
but
sure.
this term KPIs.
Uh-huh.
Like, what are KPIs, and as it relates to data?
Um, it's so there's a, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast, right?
Yeah, we'll do it. You want to come back? Hopefully, this
Sure.
scare you off. Adam
So
dropping everything else.
KPIs are key performance indicators,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But there's two pieces that I think about in KPIs. There's the solid yes ands, right? There's the,
yeah,
I want 5 velocity.
yeah,
How am I going to get there? What's it going to do? So
yeah.
I could have a 5 KPI, but now we're getting into organizational behavior of what does that 5 KPI mean? So what
Okay.
am I going to have to do? And yes, so key performance measure is I want my velocities to be, I mean, a good case in point, and I love the brand is Evergreen that we worked with
Yeah.
in terms of waffle. We started with them at 500 doors. In 15 months, we got them to, say almost 10,000
Oh
doors,
wow.
and
Okay.
it's a waffle. But um, we took our nemesises and how are you going to get from uh, 0? Well, they were actually doing very well in Whole Foods, doing 10 plus units per store per week, which is a lot for a waffle. Um, but how do you tell that story? And then how are you going to gain that KPI within each store? So if I'm going in, I use Meyer kind of a lot, but it's an easy one. Is that so? If I'm going into Meyer, what are my expectation velocity or the KPI? So
Mm,
that's one KPI. Another KPI could be fill rate,
okay.
right? So what kind of fill rate do I have to be? Now, I talked about I want to have a 98% fill rate. If I understand what my velocities are and such, what is my operational behavior have to be to get there? What kind of cash do I need to get there? All those other things. So there's a two sides to every KPI. There's a behavior.
I love that. I look at KPIs from a sales perspective, but
Sure.
that's obviously sales too. But it's funny. I've represented many suppliers over the years, and they're like, "Well, I get the distributor. They need to take like 200 days of inventory in the back room." I'm like, "I got news for you. They want just in time.
Right.
They want it. They don't want to keep more than 30 days in the floor, and some days 15 days, or they want it just gone the day later because the cost to hold inventory is high, right? And so those are KPIs and the whole bit. But we definitely need to come back on another podcast because we could talk about leading and lagging indicators
Exactly.
and really go deep.
Right.
Because obviously, and you talked about I think you talked about joy. By the way, joy is a term that, like, if someone told me, if you walk into the boardroom and you see everybody with frowns on their faces and they're not happy, short sell the stock and get out as quick as possible. So that's a leading indicator that things aren't going well in that company, everybody. So I always ask everybody this as we wrap up. So I'm going to ask you this question. It's not a difficult one. At least I don't think it is. And then just maybe let you leave with everybody, whatever you want to leave with, like maybe 3 or 4 things you want people to leave with. And then I'd love people to find you. So we'll actually put how to get connected. I'll put like at the end of the podcast, how to get in contact with 5G and their services.
Yeah.
But I always ask everybody this that comes on, what is the difference between success and failure?
It's a fine line, really fine line. Define, so success is be able to digest the errors that you have. Anybody who's successful has not had problems. So how do you digest it, and then how do you make changes in your behavior or your company's behavior to move forward?
Right.
I think you always have to measure yourself on what level, and again, be able to pivot off of that. The other that I kind of like to live by, John Wooden. Now I'm dating myself. But
That's okay, I'm with you.
If you don't do it right now, when will you do it right? So take the time to do it right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is be quick but careful, because there's always analysis paralysis behind that. But if you're thinking careful enough but being quick, because what we say a lot is that perfection is the evil of getting it done. So sometimes it's not perfect, but it's good, and it gets you to the 80-20 rule.
God, I love that. So perfection is the what? Say it again.
Evil of getting it done.
Yeah, I guess so many people. I did this for years. It took me really, out of my 40-year career, 37 of it to realize that you have to hit go and go do something. And I became an entrepreneur 2 years ago, not because I wanted to, because I had to.
Sure.
I didn't have another option. Now, if I could tell my younger self, now that I've jumped off the cliff, so to speak, I would do it all over again. But boy, I was like hanging back. I'm not going, man. I'm happy. I got the 15th and 30th, right?
Yeah.
Because I was trying to be perfect. I was trying to put food on the table, and I thought the 15th and 30th were promised. So that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And what you share.
And I think the other thing, so kind of on 5G is that I pay a lot. You and I probably both play a lot of business therapist at the same time, right? Yeah. Our job is helping be, that business therapist for them too.
I spend a lot of time, and I'll put this out there, and I'm sure you'd be the same. Marshall's the exact same way, by the way. Yeah. Just to help people, if I can help you, and I'm so glad we're chatting, because I wish we just need to chat more, because this is, I think I told you that this is, I was a data guy. I was the first original category captain.
Oh, that's right. You told me that.
So we should spend a lot more time. I love data. I want to get re-engaged with it, because I don't think, if you're really a brand, you're really coming to market, if you don't invest in someone like your company's services, you're doing yourself a disservice, because if you're just doing it by the seat of your pants and not putting some money in, it's just so many people. It's like, do you know Roger B. Lee? I'm sure you know Roger too. Yeah. So Roger said something very powerful. Like, they have what's called the $7,500 package. I don't know if it's still there, so don't quote me. But I said, what are your costs of service? He goes, hey, to get started, our firm was founded by entrepreneurs. It's the $7,500 package. And I'm like, everybody, that's the best investment you could ever make. And I'd say the same thing for 5G. is if you don't have data, go invest in, like, the 5 people on Mike's team or whatever you have, Mike, if I heard that
Yeah.
correctly. Like, go to the experts. They're going to talk about velocity, reorder rate, contribution, what was it, ACV, those things that you need to
TDPs.
know to build this. Yeah, what's that?
TDPs, productivity. There you go.
Yeah. It says it's great. I can't wait to have that sheet because you're
Yeah,
going to make me look smart.
I'm sure Nielsen's got something on it too, but I'll
No,
give you
no,
my-
it's like, I know.
give you
We
my-
could talk about was it market development index and brand development or consumer development index, market
Yeah.
development index. We
Right.
could get into like that, like which is the whole like all these sheets and stuff.
fair
but,
share analysis. Yeah, it gets crazy.
Oh my God! So what would you want to leave everybody with in the kind of the final moments here that you would want people to take away from what we talked about?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I'm pretty humble, so I don't like talking about our, myself or whatnot too much. But we're really good at what we do, and I think the difference is that we invest in our, the brands that we work with as if we're shareholders.
Okay.
So it's really important in kind of that value proposition. Yeah. So I would say, let's have a conversation. It's a conversation, and my information is free for what it's worth when we do have a conversation. So,
Yeah, I love that. I believe I need to have a conversation with you as well. So thank you so much. I'll put everybody in touch with you so
great.
I can get
Thank you.
probably put your LinkedIn page if you're cool with that, your connection to your company.
Sure.
And then I would love to find another time for you to come back. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks
And,
for
and please remain on the line, please, Michael, because we
Okay.
are not completely uploaded. A lot of times people will leave this and we don't know, but everybody enjoy their Thursday. I'll have to shout out to my friend Jessie Ott. She does Thursdays too, so a little promotion of her. I'll get you on that podcast as well.
Okay.
Maybe she'll invite me back. It's been a while, but anyway, take care,
Really fun.
everybody.
Really fun.